This is Ryan McGowan, and you're listening to Monday Night Football.
And we're back on Monday Night Football. Right, let's get straight to the football. Who wants to start? Connor, should we go with you?
Well, I mean, I don't mind. We could toss a coin again like we did for the first few shows. There's obviously been a good solid half hour of Hibs chat there, so we can go with Hibs. That's
after Christmas. Who's got any money?
I'll score. I don't have 50p on me. I'm quite happy to talk about the Hibs.
How much do you want to dwell on it? Should we try and keep it relatively?
Well, it's the first game I've been to in quite some time. Obviously, I've been away for a little while, so
yes.
I was really looking forward to it. And by the end of the first half, I felt thoroughly entertained. But sadly, it turned out to be another one of those disappointing afternoons at Easter Road.
Indeed.
Apologies, I'm still recovering a bit from standing in the snow as well. Got a chest infection. Really it was another Jekyll and Hyde performance. I mean, there were passages of play sort of 10-15 minutes at a time where we were looking fantastic, really comfortable, and then, as everyone knows, we blew it in the end.
Right, let's focus on personnel first and foremost. Alan Stubbs made a few all kind of obvious and justifiable changes, I would say, but still surprising given the run that the team's been on lately and how well I think we all agreed that they performed at Tynecastle the week previous, even though they failed to win the game. Were you surprised that there were quite so many changes to the side, Connor?
Not really. I mean, I think he's still the likes of bringing in Boyle, for example. I wasn't surprised to see him trying out a few of the new strikers that we've got in, changing the shape slightly. Changing the position of people in the diamond, putting Scott Allen at the top of the diamond, for example, didn't quite work out. But I wouldn't have thought that would have had such an immediate impact on the game. I think overall the main failing on Saturday was a number of our key players just having a bad afternoon, particularly at the back.
Right, let's focus on the positives then before we analyse those problems at the back. Jason Cummings was a pretty obvious positive. Now, the BBC seemed pretty determined to take the second goal off him, but we'll say that he was a hat-trick hero. How positive was his performance at the weekend?
No, absolutely, it was great, and as I said before, Scotland had one of its quieter games, but the link up between those two for all three goals was really impressive. Both players playing with confidence, and Cummings is just fantastic at the moment. A lot quieter in the second half, but once you've scored a hat-trick, you've sort of earned the right to quiet down a little. His performance was fantastic, so quick, so full of energy, and they definitely deserved all three goals. So between him and Martin Boyle as well, who's obviously on loan, I think that's been a very positive piece of business for Hibs. You guys didn't talk about it too much last week, but that's something that could work out really well for us. Harris, by all accounts, is doing fantastically at Dundee. He scored at the weekend, and this could result in us getting one of our damaged star players back. Towards the end of the season, the start of next season. Mm-hmm. In the interim, even if that doesn't work out, Martin Boyle was looking fantastic on Saturday. Getting into loads of great positions, getting through defenders, and he looks like he's going to be a great addition, particularly while Malonga's away.
Yeah, he seems to bring a pace to that front line, especially when combined with Cummings, who's no slouch either, that maybe that kind of dynamism hasn't been seen in a Hibs front pairing for a wee while.
Yeah, absolutely. Both were looking great, and Boyle was very unlucky not to score. Firstly,
are we calling that unlucky?
Well, you guys have just seen the highlights. He was unlucky not to score. That it was a bit of a sitter.
Yeah.
But what wasn't on the highlights was this inexplicable moment where he looked certain to score, and Scott Allen snuck up behind him and took the ball off him for some reason.
I did hear about that one.
And it was maybe a training ground move that hadn't worked out or something. I'm not sure quite what he was thinking, but the look on Boyle's face was pretty priceless. It was all Hibs fans as well. Why on earth did you do that? But at the time we were 3-1 up, so we thought we'd probably gotten away with it.
At least it's an improvement on Heffernan.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is great. Hibs have got such a sort of embarrassment of strikers at the moment, which we were struggling with at the start of the season. And, you feel a bit sorry for these guys, because what else do they have to do? I mean, Cummings gets a hat-trick. a couple of missed chances, but do we really need to be scoring 4 or 5 goals a game just to balance out the problems at the other side of the field?
Okay, let's move on to the problems at the other side of the field then. The initial reaction seemed to be that Mark Oxley was potentially the man at fault, but I think a few people have now revisited that and decided that maybe it was indecision in front of him that inspired his indecision. Where do you fall in that argument?
I think it was fairly symbiotic. I mean, Oxley did not have a great game, and we shouldn't start singling him out for abuse. Everybody has a bad game sometimes. Conditions weren't perfect, and the ball seemed to slip out of his hands quite a lot. He seemed to, have quite a few indecisive moments, and maybe that filtered through to the back line, or it may have been a mixture of the both. But none of our players had a particularly fantastic game in defence. Even the usually reliable Liam Fontaine had a few hairy moments where he looked all at sea, especially for a sort of 10-minute period in the second half. And watching all 3 goals, all very soft goals, all 4 goals, I guess, if you want to look at the offside one as well. All sort of quite simple balls into the box, which our defence didn't seem to be able to deal with. Some inexplicable moments. Hanlon and Booth sort of parting ways to allow John Baird through on goal for the first goal. I'm not sure what Liam Craig was attempting for the second goal, blasting the ball into his own net. And just the amount of bodies in the box and during some of the Falkirk goals, none of whom seemed to know what they were supposed to be doing. So I wouldn't blame Oxley alone. He didn't have a great game, and whether sort of his problems were translating to the players in front of him, or whether it was just a bad day at the office all round, is a little hard to tell. But he's not had too many ropey games for us, so I think he can be forgiven slightly.
Okay. Now, we don't like to talk about referees too often on this show, but given that you mentioned both inexplicable decisions and people not knowing what they're doing in your last comment there, I feel it a requirement to at least bring up that moment and get the perspective of a Hibby on it, because I think there's been a bit of chat on phone-ins, and there was a Falkirk fan on Off the Ball who was absolutely convinced Hibs had kicked off, and it didn't
must have been under the influence when he was making his comments.
Offside. So you can be the response to that, the Hibs response to that, Connor. What was it like in the stadium, kind of watching that play out?
It was very unusual because it's definitely the longest I've ever seen, the longest amount of time I've ever seen past between a goal being given and then disallowed. I mean, the Hibs players were ready to kick off. We hadn't kicked off yet. The lineswoman had her flag up for a little while.
What was the Hibs reaction like at the time? Did the Hibs players all flood to the...
No, I mean, this is one of the... we almost sort of forgot about it. Well, not forgot about it, but I mean, there was a few shouts for offside, and a few... People don't get too upset when it was so cold, it was snowing at the time, so people were just, just our luck kind of thing. But people had forgotten about it pretty quickly. It's not like the Hibs players were surrounding the referee and complaining, although if you look back at the highlights, every single player looks round to see if the flag's up.
Yeah.
I really don't know why it took so long for the goal to be crossed off. I mean, it's the right decision, and fair play to him for making it so late after giving the goal. But just another strange moment in Scottish football.
It did seem odd that, for example, in Sports Scene, they then felt the need to single Willie call him out for praise for the ending up at the right decision, and you thought, aye, but there's loads of goals disallowed for offside, and they never get to the point of being a minute and a half down the line and then being cancelled out. So I'm not sure you should really single out for praise the one guy who draws it to that extreme. But as you say, it was the right result in the end. Before we move on for the Hibs game then, is there any one thing in particular or any individual performances that you feel need to be singled out from that game at the weekend?
It was good to see Miguel again. It's been a long time since I've seen him play. I thought again he was his usual self. A little rusty, but very entertaining to watch. Our new boy Judge Edgy or DJ Edgy, or
I think it's just JJ. I think it's just Frank JJ.
I quite like DJ Edgy though. We could get a jingle at that.
DJ Edgy, it makes it sound like one of these rapper guys that's would be on Ross's show before this maybe. He looked really good when it came on too. He looked like somebody who knew what he was doing. He was getting into a lot of good space, especially out wide. So I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more from him. I've already spoken about Boyle. Very enjoyable to watch. Those. I mean, Craig and Robertson, we've spoken before, when those two play too close together, it does tend to get a little congested. I'd prefer to see Craig at the tip of the diamond, and Robertson, Robertson tends to be effective for sort of 70 minutes or so, and then sort of falls out of the game a little, unfortunately. But overall, I think the main problem is, as everybody knows, this is the third time we've played Falkirk now. We've managed to get 1 point out of those 3 games, and this is going to be a big problem for us. We don't have to worry about Rangers. We need to sort of forget about what's happening at Hearts, because it's Falkirk and Queen of the South. They're the teams that we're almost certainly going to be playing in the playoffs at this rate, and we don't seem to have an answer on how to beat them. And they just, we can't go back to the old excuse of they just sat back. They kept attacking, and I'm sure even when they were 3-1 down, Peter Houston's an experienced manager. He probably had a good feeling that they were going to get back into the game. I think he was being a little disingenuous after the match with his comments that they were unlucky not to win. I think they had a little bit. I can see Ross is just watching the highlights again here, and a little bit of help from the Hibs defence. But we're going to have to work it out. We're playing Queen of the South again in a fortnight, and how many chances do you need? Everyone makes mistakes, but when you repeat them 3 or 4 times in a season, you can't really complain about not getting enough chance to improve on yourself.
Final question on the weekend's game for Hibs then. How important is it at the moment, knowing that David Gray is going to be out for around about another 5 or 6 weeks, we think? How important is it to bring someone in this window who is an actual right back, or are you confident that Jordan Forster can come in and do that job?
I was feeling on Saturday that we were missing Jordan Forster. If we don't have anybody else to take that spot, I still think we'd probably need another reinforcement too. David Gray was a massive loss. Something I forgot to mention earlier, but almost certainly that capitulation wouldn't have happened if he hadn't been if he'd been playing on Saturday. And if he's going to be out of the equation for some time coming, then Callum Booth's a fine squad player, but some of the mistakes he made on Saturday sort of typify his game, just these lapses in concentration. And when we're looking to stop losing these silly goals, and we do have a positive strike force, we need to capitalise on that. We can't keep drawing games. So that is something that I think Stubbs he'll probably be thinking about. He won't be told. He'll be as frustrated as everyone else that we keep drawing at home in this fashion.
Okay, let's move on to the Hearts then, and I think the new striker chat will continue. But before we go any further, I've only ever done this once, is ban words for the show, and I think we banned Rangers at a certain point previously. I am banning the words Christian and Nadi from the next conversation about a new striker. So let's talk about Hearts 5, Dumbarton 1. Scott, is that the weirdest wet, windy game you've ever seen in your life? To me, the conditions as we experienced them as fans and as you saw play out in front of your eyes, they seemed to, when Hearts played well, seemed to have absolutely no impact on the actual football.
Not just Hearts, but also Dumbarton in the first half. I actually felt Dumbarton put up a pretty decent fight, and I think ultimately what told in the end was fitness and a bit of class in terms of finishing from the Hearts end. But yeah, I thought both clubs dealt very well with the conditions, and I wasn't expecting that sort of a game. I actually thought, when I woke up on the Saturday morning, I thought, could this be the day that there's a bit of a game leveller for the other side with the conditions, and maybe this is going to be the day that we do end up with a draw or just scraping a win, because I honestly couldn't see us being able to play that level of football, especially when it's not just the conditions, but playing with one stand, so there's not even any protection from the wind.
I do think that the conditions played a small part in the levels of dominance that we saw from either teams. Especially, there was a period in each half of about 10-15 minutes where the wind was particularly extreme, and that coincided with Dumbarton's spell of 4 or 5 corners in that half. One of the corners which hit the bar, and then the header which hit the bar and stuff. That was definitely at the period at which the wind was worst, and you could see Neil Alexander really flounder for a couple of minutes because he just didn't know what to do.
He was trying his best. It wasn't so much. there wasn't much he could do from the goal kicks. He literally just had to kick it and just hope.
Yeah.
But at least when he had the ball in his hands, he was trying to keep the ball as low as he could and send it out wide to Nicholson and Walker. I actually felt that he dealt with the conditions fairly decently in that first half.
Yeah, I think it literally was impossible at points.
Yeah.
And second half, I think for a period of time it got even worse, which there was a moment that we'll touch on where I think Dumbarton decided we could maybe get this called off here, which happened to coincide with Hearts' third goal. Ross, what were your thoughts on the quality of play from Hearts, in particular from the two young lads in the wing, from Walker and Nicholson?
Yeah, I mean, they were both absolutely brilliant. In terms of the game as a whole and the conditions, exactly right. It was one of those games that you would think was not played outside in those types of winds, but there was a lot of crossfield balls, a lot of high balls that seemed to kind of sit up well for a lot of the players, so give them that extra half a second to control it. Patterson in particular, he seemed to control the ball quite a few times, and same with our new striker. We'll not mention the comparison to the name, but Walker and Nicholson, they seem to be right next to each other all the time. The link between them, it's like they were just playing a five-a-side game at some points. 1-2s here and there. They were on the left, they were on the right. They were both doing the job that Robbie Neilson wants them to do individually, but at the same time. So they kind of just followed each other around, which was quite weird to see, but it worked, and it led to most of our goals. Nicholson, obviously the first one, can we blame the goalkeeper for that because it was so far out? But in terms of the actual link between the two of them, exactly what we want to see, and it's something that we've been calling out for a while.
Scott, how important was the timing of Sam Nicholson's first goal?
Yeah,
especially after having failed to score at Dumbarton the first time.
Considering the sort of frustration that was coming from the stands the last time we played there because we hadn't scored early on, I think it was very vital that we got something in the first sort of 20-25 minutes just to calm the supporters and also calm the players down, because it has been a lot tougher that last quarter of games. Obviously without Big So up front, we have been doing a good job getting the points, but there has been some close scrapes. So yeah, it was very vital to get that early goal.
Okay, let's get on to the big topic from the weekend then. Scott, we met before the game, and there's never a time that excitement is more tangible amongst the support than when there's a new striker signed and you're waiting on his debut. What are our thoughts in general? We will touch on his physical stature in a moment, but I don't want to do it in the jokey way that Sports Team tried to introduce it last night. To be fair, the pundits kind of sidestepped it, because there is a genuine discussion to be had there about whether he does need to lose the weight or whether he can get away with it at this level, or whether it adds to his game even maybe. But what were your thoughts on what he brought to our team with his style of play? We're talking about Gennaro Zeefuik. That's how we're going. That's what I've seen, Zeefuik.
Yeah, I think so.
Gennaro.
Plus it's slightly less borderline for radio. You're less likely to have a wee slip on that one.
It was a kind of look into the past as to what I thought So and Keatings would be like together, in terms of how they linked up, how he held up the ball, and it was. I think we're going to see this quite a lot this season. But players were literally trying to get the ball from him, just couldn't get through him. Yes, that's because of his stature, which we'll get onto. But it's absolutely brilliant, and not only that, he's mobile as well. We noticed he didn't seem to be unfit. He was everywhere in the park. He came back as well to defend, and not only that, I mean, because we had two up front, he had someone there at all times to pick up on any scraps, any loose balls, anything like that, which Keatings does really well, and that's why I think they complement each other. I think when So comes back, I don't know what will happen if Keating stays in or not, or if we go back to one up front. That's an interesting kind of topic which we might touch on. But in terms of him, he's exactly what we need. Someone to hold up the ball, to bring up the midfielders into play, especially Nicholson and Walker, who seem to be quite near him a lot of the time. So it was just a little ball here and there. In the box, he found space quite a lot. Again, absolutely brilliant and exactly what we need. Hopefully, this kind of chat about his stature, how he looks and everything. Yes, he's a big guy. He's a very, very big guy. He looks like a rugby player, but at the same time, he's not like he's not going to be standing there in the middle of the field doing nothing. He's actually getting about, coming wide, coming short. Exactly what we need.
Scott, how much of the upturn in performance levels at the weekend, in dynamism of the team, the fact that they were flying again, how much of that was down to Falk, and how much of it was down to simply having another striker so we could return to 4-4-2?
Yeah, it's no coincidence that Walker and Nicholson have had their best game for a while, especially in Nicholson's case. I think the shape of the team, I think a 4-4-2 with that setup is when we play our best football. I think Keating's, when he's not needed to play with his back to goal, is a far better player. Although he did miss chances on Saturday, which a lot of people have highlighted, but the encouraging thing is he was in the positions, and I'm sure 9 times out of 10 he will take those chances again, and I'm just hoping he's maybe just saved a couple for Friday. But yeah, I thought he had a good game. I think that sort of game is perfect for someone who is looking for match fitness, playing against a part-time team. I think it would have been difficult if he'd been playing last week against Hibs in that sort of environment. So I think the timing of his debut was quite key. I think it was good to get him off after an hour, and obviously again give him another 60 to 75 minutes on Friday. Hopefully Carrick or so might make the bench at the end of the week. So yeah, very positive signing on the looks of it so far.
Okay, we will shortly transition into Friday's game, because we've got to do a wee bit chat about that, at least because it is rather important in the context of the season. But before we move on from the weekend, there were a few. We've touched on the wingers already in terms of their performances. Were there any other real stickouts in the Hearts team for either of you guys, Ross?
Patterson for me. He seemed to, it may be down to the space he was getting down the right hand side. I don't know why, but they kind of seemed to, because they were sitting that deep at some points, he always has space to run into. And Callum Patterson, when he's running at you full pelt, it's not a kind of good sight for the left back. And he was getting his early crosses in really well, which people were finding. So in terms of kind of the unsung heroes, I'd put Callum Patterson there definitely.
Scott, anyone for you that needs to be mentioned?
2 things I noticed on Saturday. Prince Boabin, in the same way that we've spoken about Scott Allen possibly being a better player when he's playing a bit deeper in midfield and maybe not as a number 10, I think Boabin's the same. Boabin's been tried out as a number 10 earlier on in the season, and I don't think he looked like his natural position, where he was back to his best playing on a straightforward 4-4-2 with Gomez at the weekend. The other thing I wanted to highlight was Callum Patterson's reaction when we lost our goal. It was obviously a moment of fun for the Hearts fans, because obviously it was 5-1, and we know what that means for the Dumbarton manager, but his reaction and the way that he remonstrated towards the Hearts fans and basically just shook his head at our reaction to the goal, I loved that. I thought it was funny at the time, but looking back at it, I like a guy who is that upset at his team losing a goal even when they're 5-0 in front. So that was really good to see.
Callum Patterson does seem to have put himself forward a few times this season to be someone who is willing to have it out with the Hearts fans to an extent. There's been a couple of times at Tynecastle in particular where the team has, or the fans have started to turn. They've not, at no point at Tynecastle has it got to the point where we've turned, because we've no lost the game, so it would be difficult to. But there have been a few times where there's been murmurings. I think Cowdenbeath was a good example where there was a few boos at half time at 1-1. But there was a game recently, I think, where, especially because Patterson plays wide right, so he's right on the touchline, the second half in front of the Wheatfield stand, where I know that there was a couple of moments where he almost, he had that real moment of connection with the Hearts fans, but in a kind of negative sense, in terms of like, get up for it, we're doing our best and you're not really helping us here. It is interesting that he's willing to put himself forward as being that guy, that even if he ends up taking flack for it from the supporters,
I think in the whole that'll be a positive thing for him.
Definitely, it shows that he's got a strong character, that he's willing to put that across. It's also interesting because I have to say, I've heard a few rumours about the makeup of the contracts at Hearts at the moment, and the rumour is that there's very, very little performance related pay. There's not, which you would think the opposite given how they're performing. But the rumour that I heard, it might be absolute rubbish, but the rumour that I heard was most players now are solely on fixed salaries, and it's as simple as that, and it gives them a wee bit more stability, especially having been through admin.
I think that's one of the reasons behind the contract discussions with Holt stalling. I think that is now, on a downside.
It's very interesting to see that Patterson was so hacked off at a goal conceded when there's no clean sheet bonus.
Yeah, so
As a defender, he's not lost any money for that. That is purely a professional pride thing of, we shouldn't be losing goals in this scenario. You know, we were so dominant at that point. It was a daft goal to concede. It was just a moment where everyone seemed to knock off half a yard and we were a wee bit slow to react.
Considering the other goals maybe should have had, they could have had in the first half. The one that we did lose was obviously probably the worst of the lot, and it kind of went through a sea of bodies as well, and it was unlucky.
It was a decent hit from Chris Kane, but it just was that moment where you think, why are we quite so deep? Why are we just sitting on the edge of the box and then randomly getting men drawn out to the ball too slow? It was a bit of a poor scenario.
Bit of a stramash.
Yeah. But as you say, you have to put it in perspective, which was that the game was over at the time, and we did, as we've said a lot this season, Hearts are quite a practical club at the moment. Robbie Neilson does look at things in context, and there was definitely a wee rotation, a wee shuffle of the pack to just keep guys fresh for Friday night. On to Friday night then, do we expect to see the exact same Hearts team?
Yeah. I actually think he is going to go 4-4-2 this time. He did play that at Ibrox at the first opening day of the season, and I think it would be foolish not to. I do think we've been, I wouldn't say conservative, but I think we have focused on containing Rangers and Hibs at points this season, and I think this is probably the first opportunity where I've seen us probably going in there in a more positive frame of mind, and I do find it hard to believe that we're going to go in there and get beaten this game. I do think if we approach the game in the right manner and we do go 4-4-2 and we do get the ball out wide to our danger players, then I can't see how we can't be scoring goals against this Rangers team.
I do remember in the first game, you're correct, Hearts did go 4-4-2, but there was a fluidity to the way that Dale Carrick was utilised in that game that did see him drop out to the wing at points and it become a wee bit more of a five in the middle. Does James Keatings potentially have a wee bit work to do this week with getting comfortable tucking in wide in that team to potentially give us that wee bit more solidity if it's required?
I don't see why we need to do that. I mean, Gomez and Blabin should be able to deal with Law and Hutton quite comfortably. I don't see why. I think Rangers are the team that are going to be going into this quite conservative. I think Smith will start left mid. I very much doubt that they're going to play Templeton and Shields out wide. I think Smith will come back in and he'll play left midfield. I think it's Rangers that might put that extra man in midfield. You might see Black going in with Hutton and Law and just one man up front. I don't think there's anything for Hearts to fear in this game at all.
Ross, what are your thoughts in terms of personnel and shape? Would you be pleased to see the same 11 emerge?
As I've said before, even against Hibs, I've always been a fan of 4-4-2. I think that's when we are at our strongest. Yes, we've been forced to play a different style due to our striking options in the past, but I think we do have to go 4-4-2 in this game. Do I think it will happen? I'm not 100% sure. And reason being that I think the extra man in midfield, I don't know if Robbie Neilson maybe sees, I think their dangerous player is probably Law. An extra man in midfield would maybe nullify that, and once we get it wide to Nicholson, Walker or whoever plays, that takes him out of the game totally, and we're getting it to the danger areas more. Maybe Gennaro will come out, I'm not 100% sure, but I want him to play 4-4-2. Do I think it will happen? No.
It is an interesting time to be a Jambo in that respect, because Neilson is a manager who keeps you guessing. And the positive thing for us is that the opposition managers must be in the exact same scenario, where they're sitting thinking, well, Hearts have got 3 or 4 different lineups that they could go with, and these slight tweaks, and even things like potentially bringing in Jordan McGee as a more defensive option at fullback, and then you could push Patterson on if you wanted. Patterson played up front against Cowdenbeath. You've always got those types of options. There really is loads of scope, especially now we've got that additional striker and we've got these guys coming back. You never know. We might have been holding so back the last 2 weeks. You never know. There is that scope that there may be something like a real curveball up the club's sleeve here. It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. There's one question I want to raise, because I think in terms of personnel, it's one that is overstated by the question I'm going to ask, but there's a reason I'm going to ask it. Morgaro Gomez, we spoke about last week as having been voted the signing of the season. I think we're seeing a drop-off in his form. over the last few weeks. I think he's having less impact on games, and he's getting caught on the ball a wee bit more, I think, than we've seen. We've seen it a few times from him in the big games, but we saw it a few times on Saturday, for example, which previously, when he had the real swagger, they were games that he was just seeing off without any issue at all. Is there any argument, given that Miguel Gallardo is coming off the back of a man-of-match performance against Hibs, is there any argument to say that Gallardo should be given an opportunity to play that role in a 4-4-2?
No, just purely because of the partnership with Gomez and Blackburn. I don't think... I thought he was showing signs of getting back to his best against Dumbarton. There was one or two minor moments in the first half where he was caught in the ball, but on the whole, I thought that was the best Gomez has probably played for about a month or so. And I don't think he's been... I can't say he's ever had a bad game.
No, he's at no point has he been a problem.
I think his standards have been that high that it was always going to tail off. I mean, if Gomez was capable of playing that way every week, he wouldn't be at Hearts in the first place.
And the funny thing as well that we're talking about that he's having a problem with is what we were saying were his strengths at the beginning of the season, in terms of he knows he draws players in, and then he gives them the opposite, blabbing the ball or whoever comes to take it off him.
The problem is if he's lacking that half a yard sharpness, he gets caught when he tries to do that, and it then becomes an issue because they're breaking on us.
It's funny how it swings and roundabouts, but at the end of the day, he's been our best signing.
That's why I brought up the question, because there is that with the squad that Hearts have at the moment. I don't think anyone in theory should be immune from, well, you're not in the best form and we've got someone else who is. That I do think it's a wee bit harsh on Gallardo now, that there is such a partnership between Gomez and Blackburn.
I mean, it's nothing against Gallardo. Gallardo's came in and done a job.
Gallardo's a better player than being our 12th man.
Yeah.
He definitely is, there's no question of that. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think there is that real belief that it'll either be the team that we saw there or we'll go back to a 4-5-1, but then there's the real question over who's the one.
It would have to be the big Dutch lad. You couldn't play Keatons up there on his own.
Do you think so?
I think you would start off with the Dutch lad and then bring on Keatons at a later point if you need to stretch Rangers.
I'd be worried it's asking too much of him at this point. But I can see what he's saying. If you had the choice between the two, you would go for the big Dutch guy. But I just think
the problem then is
going to be up
you
front.
would really need to get Nicholson and Walker in around them. Otherwise you lack mobility in the way that if they line up with John Daly up front on his own, we'll be rubbing our hands with glee.
I think we've got to avoid, and I know that we said that we didn't want to mention this player this evening, but we've got to avoid a set-up that Christian Nadi was involved in sometimes at Hearts, was isolated, and his lack of mobility was highlighted because we didn't get our midfielders close enough to him. I don't really want to see that sort of setup being used with the Dutch lad on Friday.
Right, just to concentrate on Zeefuik a wee bit more, just for 1 minute before we move on to the weekend preview. How pleased were you with his goals? I think they're the kind of goals when you watch them back, or opposition fans, Hibs supporters for example, would watch them and think, well, you just had to knock them in. There's hardly anything to get excited about. But how pleased were you with the fact that he was there and his runs got him into the danger area?
Well, I made the point to a few people sitting around me during the game that we've had plenty of forwards over the last few years that would have still been standing on the halfway line whilst all that was all going on. So I don't think we should be taking it for granted that just because it was in the 6-yard box it's not a good goal. It's a good striker's goal. That's where you want your strikers to be when we've got players such as Walker and Nicholson hitting the byline. So yeah, there were two good goals on that basis, and it was good to see. I felt that Walker and Nicholson and Keatons were all trying to get him involved, and especially in the first half you could see that when they were looking up, he was the one they were aiming for 9 times out of 10 in the box. So for somebody who had only been at the club 2 days, it looked like the players had done a very good job integrating him into the squad very quickly.
Ross, how big was it to see him scoring goals and Poacher's goals when that was the one question mark on his CV as to how prolific he can be?
Well, the funny thing is, I mean, the positions he found himself in for the goals is the position you would expect Keatons to be in.
Yeah. And Keatons, to be fair, was in them the other couple of times, but just didn't have the finish.
Yeah, we'll not talk about the sitter that he missed. But and the fact that he could have had a couple more as well. He made his own shots. Luckily for the Dumbarton, those are the ones that didn't go in the back of the net. But if you give him it on a plate, he's shown that he can stick it away. He's shown he can lose his marker. He's got a turn of pace on him, which again is surprising for his stature. So he can lose his marker in a split second, get into a position where he's the only one there in the 6-yard box, and he can put the ball in the back of the net. So, and exactly as you said, Walker and Nicholson are going to put those balls in the box every day of the week, and we've got now hopefully 2 players in there that can finish them off.
Okay, let's segue on to previewing this weekend then. Let's bring yourself back in, Connor, as well, because it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on both games here. Rangers versus Hearts. How are we thinking it's going to go? Scott, you've said you don't think Hearts will lose. Do you think they'll win?
Yeah, I do. I think Hearts will win this on Friday. Because I do think
this is the quietest I've ever heard you speak. Is there a reason? Are you trying not to tempt fate here?
Yeah, I know. You've always got that in the back of your mind that you're on radio when you're saying this. No, I do think that I can't see how we're not going to approach this in the right manner. And at the end of the day, there's all that talk, and you still find yourself sometimes going, it's Rangers, but then you've got to take a step back and say, look at their players. They're ageing, they're lacking professionalism, a lot of them just now, and fitness, along with a few other problems. It does look like Ali McCoist is still involved in some respect. I can't see any other reason why he would be at Dumbarton on a very wet and windy Saturday afternoon. So maybe gardening leave's now a euphemism for head scout. I don't know, but he's obviously still got his finger on the pulse there somewhere. So yeah, I don't see how Rangers... I mean, they've obviously still got guys who maybe can still turn it on in that one game, but I feel like us as a squad, we've got a better squad, better shape, fitter players, and on form. So really, when you look at all that, why should we lose?
Connor, what's the outsider's perspective on this game?
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, I don't see for a second Hearts losing this game. I think just the difference between the two sides is unbelievable, and it would be a big surprise. Even I think if the game was a draw, I'd be very, very surprised. And you guys have always been behind the Hibs when we play against Rangers. It would be pretty terrible. I mean, I want to see Hearts' unbeaten run ending sooner rather than later.
I get the feeling that Connor's trying to get his name written off of Craigie Boy's little black book here.
Well, that's off topic. I'm not trying to think. I'm not trying to be over neutral, but I don't. I would be pretty horrible if Rangers were the team that ended that unbeaten run. But I honestly can't see it happening. I'm not sort of. Trying to tempt fate or try to tempt you guys into saying something you'll regret next week. I honestly just can't see Hearts losing or even drawing on Friday. It would be a big surprise, and it wouldn't probably make a big deal of difference to the rest of the season. It might galvanise Rangers a little, but I don't see them. I don't see them gaining any positivity from it. No doubt the week after, something would happen at Rangers that would set them back on track. And it's just so disappointing that the Hibs can't capitalise on this. So yeah, that's my honest opinion. I don't see anything other than a Hearts win on Friday.
Ross, would you take a draw now?
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be a draw. I'm going to be the cautious one in the group here. Unfortunately, me, I'm quite confident in Hearts' abilities. Always have been, always will be. But I think in this game, Robbie is going to set out the team not to lose. Don't ask me why I think that. I just think that we've been setting up for these kind of group of games, playing Hibs twice, playing Rangers. I think we're going to set up with a 4-5-1. If we set up 4-4-2, it's different. I think we're going to win the game. Tight. It'll be tight, but I think we're going to win the game. Yes, we've got a better team. But I think there's, in some of the players, especially the younger players' minds in the back of the head, there is that it's Rangers, I'm playing at Ibrox, which they shouldn't be thinking now, but unfortunately it still exists. If it exists in the group of supporters, it definitely exists in the group of players. So I think it's going to be a tight, very, very tight game, tighter than we think. I think it's going to be 1-1.
Scott, would you take a draw if you were offered it right now?
No, I honestly don't think we should be now. After watching Rangers at Easter Road, and I can see what you're saying, Obviously,
it's just because it will be a question that will go round.
Yeah, you would obviously take a draw in
especially
that respect.
if it's 0-0 at half time. There will definitely be that conversation of do we stick or twist?
Yeah.
Do we go to try and win this, or do we simply sit in and just say, well, we'll take this? It certainly suits us better than them.
I don't think our back two can cope with an aerial bombardment for a full 90 minutes. I think we do need to attack Rangers to beat them. I don't think us playing a conservative style of football on Friday and allowing Rangers to push up high up the park on us will work out well for us in the long term. I think Wilson and Osturk are good centre halves, but I think in the air they do tend to struggle. So I would rather we were bringing the game to Rangers and pushing them up at their end and looking for goals for ourselves.
Who's the ref as well?
Yeah, I've not found that out yet.
I don't know yet, actually. That's
unfortunately, that does come into play.
That's as important a question as any, potentially, yeah. Okay, let's start to wrap it up then. We'll start to go with predictions. I'm kind of erring on the side of caution a wee bit like you, Ross. I just think Robbie will approach it in a way that we start with a draw and we don't get anything less than that.
It's not a bad thing.
I think we'll play it in the same way how we play the derbies, which will be we will play not for 0-0, but we will play knowing that 0-0 suits us better than them, and then we will see what moments of individual quality we can come up with. And I think that we will come up with at least one, because we tend to score, and then it will be the question of, can we keep them out of the other end?
I found myself going down that path of thinking sometimes over the weekend, yeah, it probably will just be a score draw, and I think it's because we are conditioned still as fans to really respect Rangers.
See, I've not got that.
That we've watched.
I just think Robbie will respect the fixture in terms of its importance to the season. I don't think he'll respect them as a team, because I think everyone looks at them as a team and thinks they've so many weaknesses that there's no doubt about it, you could go there and hurt them. But equally, if they were to get their tails up or score a fluke, they do still have areas of strength where I think like I say, as the fixture, you would go and say, well, a loss does us a lot more damage than, in theory, than a win does, because 13 points is, as Connor says, 13 points looks insurmountable anyway.
Yeah.
So the plus points of winning it, yes, it looks like it kills it off, but a lot of people think it's killed off already. The negatives of losing are such that I think Robbie will say, well, if it's 13 points at the end of the night, none of us are really going to be too worried about it. Which I think is why we will then err on the side of caution. I don't think we worry about them as a team, but do you know what I mean? It's that difficult balancing act.
Robbie Neilson has proven himself this season to be the more modern type of manager that's coming through now, to be more professional, to not really listen to what fans are telling in a pub on a Saturday, get right into them and all this. He just wants to go to Ibrox, get the job done, come out with at least a point. There's no way he's going to... Imagine if we lose at Ibrox. I mean, it's just unthinkable. If we go in attack and they hit us on the break and they get a lucky goal or whatever, he's going to play a solid team out there.
That's the biggest thing for me. I think Robbie Neilson's shown this season that he's first and foremost, he's a pragmatist, and he goes with his best chance of winning the game. And a lot of the time we see that play out where, and it's not... a lot of the fans don't love the style at points where they think we should be going out and obliterating teams the first 25 minutes. Instead, what Nielsen's implemented is a tactic that is deliberate enough that we can play it solidly for 90 minutes. And if they don't cave in the first 10-15, then they'll cave in the last 10-15, and we'll just ride it out.
We've done that the last time at Ibrox. I think the way we were set up was win your 50-50s the first half an hour, keep it tight, and then if it's 0-0 second half, we'll go out there and we'll play a bit more football. And it did. It worked pretty much perfectly for the majority of that match. And I can understand why people would probably think that we're going to approach the game like that again on Friday. I am just hoping that we don't. I saw enough out of that Hibs game where I just feel that being under the cosh for that length of time, we have done very well defensively this season, but I still have my doubts in terms of dealing with constant sort of aerial bombardment. And that's all Rangers have. Let's be honest, they can't play the game through the midfield, especially with Hutton in there. He slows the play down, so does Law. So really, they've got one option, which is hit it long, hit for Daly, and hope that Miller or Clark, whoever's playing up front, can feed off the scraps. Which is why I would rather we did go out there for the very first minute and try and kill the game early. Try and get an early goal, deflate the team, deflate the crowd as well, and get our tails up.
Okay, let's round that up then before we touch on Hibs Cowdenbeath. Ross, score and key man.
I think it's going to be 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
I think our key man is going to be our signing of the season, Gomez.
Okay.
I was going to say Priardo, but that's just a cop-out, because I think if he's coming in to look after Law, he'll be the key man. But that's a cop-out, so just ignore it, everything I said there.
Okay.
I think Gomez is going to be the one to lead the midfield and, as Scott mentioned earlier, try and overtake the game and be the one who's getting the ball all the time and pulling the strings from deep and getting the ball back as soon as possible when we lose it. I think that's going to be the most important part of the pitch on Friday.
Scott, score and key man.
2-0 Hearts and key man Callum Patterson. I think we need to keep Lee Wallace quiet, and I think Callum Patterson will be a big player for us on Friday in terms of making sure that Lee's having to worry more about his defensive game than hitting us in attack.
Connor, what's your score prediction?
I also thought 2-0 Hearts. I thought that was good. So I think Gomez will probably be the kind of player that Rangers just don't know what to do with, sort of similar to the times they played Hibs this year, where our midfield has been too much for them. I think the way Rangers play is woeful, and I think you guys are being very cautious in your analysis of the game. But we'll see next week.
It's a weird feeling to be like that, though. Don't get me wrong.
But then you kind of have to, because otherwise you're in that thing of like everyone. Don't get me wrong. Everyone is waiting for us to slip up anyway. But you don't want to add to that, and stoke the fires even more, so that there's this real venom coming towards you. We're trying to have some element of humility here, with the fact that we are having a season that's beyond even our wildest dreams at this point in time. Let's move on to Hibs at Easter Road on Saturday to Cowdenbeath. I will be there, so I might hazard a guess at this one as well. Connor, what's your prediction?
Well, I think this is one where, first and foremost, we have to keep tabs on John Robertson, because he's scored against us twice this year.
We're putting a bet on this week.
We did remember that. Keep him under control. I really think this is one that we should win without too many problems. We will face. I'm certain that Cowdenbeath are going to sit back. Jimmy Eccles, Cowdenbeath, they're sort of floating above the playoff position at the moment, and a draw would sit them down to the ground, I think, away from home. We have beaten them twice already this year. I don't see any reason why we would slip up. I mean, if we did slip up on Saturday, that's when it starts to get to sort of disaster points again, when you're thinking, where is this season going to end up? But I can't see it happening. I think we'll have enough quality from breaking through like quite a negative team. I think a lot of Scott Allen's intelligent passing is going to work well. His partnership with Cummings is coming to fruition. They seem to have quite a good understanding of each other now. I guess Allen's his partnership with Boyle might need improvement, so they're not running into each other. But communication's key. I don't think our defence is going to have much of an option but to stay the same. So they really should be working on communication to avoid just losing silly soft goals, balls being pinged into the box.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The earlier fixture, or the earlier iteration of this fixture, Hibs Cowdenbeath finished 3-2. Is there any concern that Cowdenbeath might carry the same kind of goal threat? They seem to have tailed off since then, and they weren't phenomenal at that point in the season. But is there any concern that coming up against them with the defensive frailties that you got, they may manage to score a couple again?
I feel like now. I mean, I was at the last sort of away fixture at Cowdenbeath, and the thing that galvanised them was when Mark Oxley went off injured and they started pinging loads of balls into the box. That they might try that again, but I just feel now Hibs should be confident enough to deal with that. We should have a good enough attacking threat and a strong enough midfield to avoid defensive errors becoming an issue. So I think Saturdays, in a way, we sort of need to be thinking about the week after against Queen of the South, because they're an immediate threat. They've got a game in hand against us just now, and they're only a point behind us. And in a way, we kind of just need to get Saturday under our belts. And Stubbs has shown himself to be quite tactically aware for bigger games, and that the Queen of the South game coming up is turning into one of our bigger games now because they're so close to us in the table. So we really need to be starting to think about how we're going to make sure we win that without any nonsense, without any last minute draws creeping into the equation. So Saturday, I think we've got enough under our belts. I think we should be able to win quite comfortably.
Do you, despite the disappointment at the weekend there, do you expect to see the same team line up on Saturday, just with a few minor tweaks to the actual way that the tactics are implemented, or do you think there'll be any personnel changes?
I think things will remain much as they were. I think maybe Alan will be moved a little deeper into midfield. I don't think that Handling will replace McGeoch. I think when he's fit, McGeoch is Stubbs' first option, but that's part of the pitch. So I think it will remain largely the same.
Would you expect that then to remain the same team through a Queen of the South? So in actual fact, this weekend kind of becomes a bit of a dress rehearsal for Queen of the South?
Yeah, I would have thought so, unless we do get some more reinforcements in defence, particularly at right back, because we've got a sort of very left foot focused defence at the minute, which is causing us problems. But presuming nothing changes, I think that's his preferred team, and it's a shame for Danny. I mean, obviously McGeoch's here on loan, so he's not here forever. But Danny Handling doesn't have a lot of impact sometimes, and I think as a sub, that's even more evident. And I could see him sort of being out of action for a little while, unless there are injuries in the squad.
But equally on the positive side for Handling, he is here for a bar because he signed a 45-year deal.
But he's here for the long run. It'd be nice if he could sort of cement himself in the team a bit longer. But yeah, I think going to be largely the same squad as played on Saturday.
Okay, let's tie it down to a score and a key man then.
Key man for Saturday, I'm going to give Martin Boyle his time to shine, because he missed a couple of chances at weekend.
Okay.
Some his fault, some not so much so. So I'm going to go for him. I'm going to go for 2-1 Hibs. Cummings and Boyle scoring for Hibs, and John Robertson, of course, going to score for Kevin and Beef just to give us a fright.
Scott, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think Hibs might change their shape. I think the new guy JJ might get played out wide, and I think he still will stick with Boyle and Cummings up front. I'm going to go for 3-0 Hibs, and I think JJ will be their star man.
There's a theme emerging here that the other sets of supporters are far more confident about your own team than we are as supporters. Ross, are you going to carry on that theme?
Yeah, I was actually going to say 3-0 as well to Hibs. I think the key man, I'm going to say Boyle as well, because coming into the team, I think he can see this game. I think when he came into the team, he was looking at the calendar. This is the game that he was going to take full advantage of, being a Hibs player now, try to prove himself against a terrible defence. So yeah, I think Boyle.
Okay, as we wrap up the show then, we've got a few exciting and important things to share with you all and to promote. Scott, you've got a couple there, I think, that you want to
I've got a couple of Hearts related bits of news just to fire out there. Any supporters that have got 100 plus sort of loyalty points, they can actually purchase a ticket for the game on Friday, starting at 9 AM tomorrow. Now obviously you can get that through the usual outlets, so it's by phone, online, or at the ticket centre. And
if you're listening on the podcast tomorrow,
yes, just remembered that,
Tuesday the 13th of January.
Yes.
So if you're listening to this,
you should all be listening live anyway.
But if you're listening on Tuesday evening, then the tickets are available now. They may not have sold out, so check the website and see if they're still available.
And for anyone who either wishes not to go to Castle Grayskull or can't, obviously make it through, the Gorgie Suite is actually open for a live beamback. Now the Gorgie Suite is going to open at 6 PM on the Friday. Now the tickets cost £10. That includes a welcome drink and a half-time pie, and there will also be a special panel consisting of some ex-Hearts players, Dave McPherson, Scott Crabb, Colin Cameron and Wayne Foster. So if you can't get along to the game, try and get a ticket for the Gorgie Suite instead.
Okay, and the final point of promotion, it is the last stages of our Ryan McGowan competition. So if you want to enter to win a signed Shandong Lineng top with McGowan and his number on, and signed on the front and back, should you wish to frame either side, then all you need to do is get onto facebook.com/Monday Night Fitba, FITBA, or get onto Twitter @MNFitba. Make sure that you follow us or like us, and make sure you share the status with a photo of Gowser with the top. That will make sure that you're entered into the prize draw, which will be made on Thursday, and we'll get in contact with the winner shortly thereafter, and we'll arrange the details to send them over the top. I think that's us for this week, guys.
I just wanted to check, was it, if you shared the Twitter and the Facebook, is that 2 entries?
Technically it is, yes. So it does make it twice as likely that you would win. But we've had quite a few entries, to be fair. So it's like, you know, when you go to Cowdenbeath and they say, and the half-time prize draw, the jackpot of £89.40, and you partly think, how did they get the 40? But then also you think, £89 not very much, but you've got quite a good chance of winning. This is kind of gone the other way. We've got a good few hundred entries now, which is good, and we're glad that there's been such interest in it. Hopefully we can follow up with another few competitions of a similar standard in a similar vein, and get spreading the word about the show. But so you still do have a chance of winning, but yes, if you share on both the Facebook and the Twitter, you're twice as likely to win.
Yay.
So on that note, we're going to leave you for another week. We will have loads to talk about next week, and we have another guest, Scott, don't we?
Yep, we've actually got cup winning legend Danny Granger, who'll be joining us on the phone next Monday, so that should be good.
So, and hopefully we will have wins for both sides to reflect on. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed Monday Night Football. Stay tuned for a night of music on Radio Saltire. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.